Okay, let's just jump right in. In this explainer, we're going to break down a deleted cinematic sequence that fundamentally changes how we view Steve Rogers. Now, we all know the iconic imagery, right? Captain America, the shield, the grand heroics. But to truly get a read on the character, we have to zoom in on the exact moment his timeline was severed. We're looking at how a kid from 1940s Brooklyn was abruptly forced to transition from a wartime hero into a modern-day operative. And honestly, the profound psychological weight of that massive shift. We start right in the thick of it with this jarring, reality-shattering revelation from S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury right there at 46th and Broadway. I mean, imagine the absolute shock of this moment. Steve Rogers has just burst out of a fake 1940s room, completely disoriented, sprinting into modern-day Times Square. Fury walks up and drops the ultimate bombshell. He tells him he's been in suspended animation, probably a mix of Dr. Erskine's Super Soldier formula and the extreme Arctic cold. In literally a matter of seconds, the world Steve fought and bled for has completely vanished. It's just gone, replaced by this overwhelming future he doesn't recognize at all. Just think about the whiplash here. In his subjective memory, literally moments ago, Steve was dealing with Johann Schmidt, the Red Skull, who was harnessing the godlike power of the Tesseract to rewrite physics and fuel weapons of mass destruction. He was deafened by the roar of a superbomber nosediving into the ice. And then, he wakes up to the eerie, calculated quiet of a sterile, artificial 1940s-style hospital room. S.H.I.E.L.D. built it to break the news slowly, but that sudden shift from a world on fire to a perfectly silent, fake room, it perfectly captures just how completely displaced in time he really is. Moving into Section 1, the illusion of frailty, engineering Skinny Steve. To really grasp the weight of his 70-year jump and his ultimate sacrifice, we have to flash back and look at the intense physical transformation at the very beginning of his journey. Before he was bridging past and present conflicts, he was just a fiercely determined but incredibly frail kid from New York. And behind the scenes, making that frailty look real was an absolute marvel. I mean, hiding Chris Evans's physique is no small task. The filmmakers worked with a visual effects company called Lola to digitally shrink him in all dimensions using a really painstaking three-pass method. First, Evans performs the scene. Then, a much scrawnier stand-in, Leander Dini, steps in to perfectly mimic his timing. And finally, they shoot a clean plate of just the background. It's like a giant, complex puzzle. And this resulting visual is just so visceral. It perfectly illustrates his frailty. A skinny kid suffering from a whole list of health problems who just wanted to do his part. A young man who gets physically knocked down but remains morally unbreakable. You know, this is the same kid who got rejected by the army over and over, yet when a dummy grenade was thrown into his squad during training, this frail version of Steve Rogers didn't hesitate. He instantly jumped right on top of it to save everyone else. His physical weakness was literally just masking an already fully formed hero. Which brings us to Section 2. The hero's monomyth, tracing the hero's journey. So that intense desire to serve wasn't just a convenient plot point. Academic analysis actually maps Steve's exact path directly onto Joseph Campbell's classic mythological hero's journey. It's a perfect fit across three distinct stages: departure, initiation, and a deeply tragic return. In the departure stage, you've got his desperate attempts to enlist, finally getting help from a mentor figure, Dr. Erskine. Then there's the initiation, crossing the threshold with the Super Soldier Serum and taking the fight to HYDRA. But then we hit the return stage, and for Steve, it's completely subverted. Instead of coming home triumphant with his new power, he crashes into the ice, forcing his return to happen 70 years later in a world he simply doesn't belong to. During that initiation phase, though, we see a brilliant balance. On one side, you have his physical peak. He emerges from the experiment as a superhuman ready to take on the world. But on the other side, we see his profound personal stakes, specifically his growing connection with MI6 agent Peggy Carter. In the framework of the hero's journey, Peggy is that absolutely crucial supportive figure. When the military reduces him to a dancing mascot selling war bonds, she's the one providing the moral support and wisdom, reminding him he's meant for so much more. She anchors his humanity right when he becomes superhuman. All right, Section 3, the heavy cost of duty, sacrifices in the ice. Because being a hero in this mythological framework, it doesn't just mean gaining power. It usually means giving up everything else. Let's look at how this builds to the climax of his journey, revealing the devastating personal cost. In 1945, to stop the Red Skull, Steve lost his best friend, sacrificed his own life, and crashed into the freezing Arctic. He saved the world, sure, but he lost his own world in the process. The cascade of losses here is just staggering. First, Bucky falls from a train to his apparent death. Then the Tesseract burns through the bomber's floor into the ocean. Realizing he can't land this massive plane without detonating weapons of mass destruction over major cities, Steve has to make the ultimate call. He gets on the radio for a heart-wrenching final goodbye to Peggy and forces the plane down, triggering his decades of suspended animation. Now on to Section 4, Bridging Past and Future, a Soldier's Work. And that brings us all the way back full circle to that deleted scene in Times Square, where the sheer tragedy of his suspended animation fully hits home. The way it's framed contextualizes Steve's survival not as some lucky miracle, but as a continuation of his unending duty. Just look at his very first instinct. He's surrounded by towering digital billboards, strange futuristic cars, SHIELD agents with weird tactical gear. His reality is shattered. But his primary concern isn't his own sanity or the impossibility of time travel. His first thought is the mission. He asks, did we win? Did they achieve unconditional surrender? It just goes to show you, the serum didn't just enhance his muscles, it completely amplified his selfless core. And Nick Fury is smart here. He uses this exact moment to bridge the gap between Steve's historical origins and his new enlistment, essentially framing him as the ultimate soldier needed for brand new global threats. Fury confirms they won the war, yeah, but quickly pivots to say the world really hasn't changed all that much. The forces of tyranny, the bullies that Steve has always stood against, are still out there. By telling Steve there's still a soldier's work to be done, Fury throws this man out of time a lifeline. He gives him a new purpose, perfectly teeing up his transition from a World War II icon to an active operative for SHIELD. But we have to end on this final, heartbreaking line from that scene. When a hero sacrifices their entire timeline to save ours, can that debt ever truly be repaid? Fury asks Steve if he's all right, and Steve, looking completely hollowed out as the realization of everything he's lost finally washes over him, just says, yeah, I had a date. All the global victories, the saved cities, defeating HYDRA, it all collapses down to a single promised dance with Peggy Carter that he'll never get to have. It really makes you wonder, is the life of a hero destined to be one of perpetual sacrifice? Definitely something to think about the next time you see a hero save the world. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.